All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the May 28th, 2025 meeting of the Urban Design Commission. My name is Tyler Holmes and I am the chair of the commission. When called on, applicants and speakers will come to the front of the podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Please do not approach the podium until it has been vacated by the previous speaker. Please speak into the microphone and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments, questions, and testimony to the commission. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is unnecessary to repeat testimony previously given by others. Citizens may address the commission on agenda items by responding to the chair's call for speakers during the discussion on the item and signing the speaker's log at the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and/or remove that person from the council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you're parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or the Arts District parking garage immediately south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket for you. The agenda and documents are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select the Urban Design Commission meeting and then click on the agenda item and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Please see the agenda for additional information regarding meeting procedures and the review process. Keith, roll.
Holmes.
Here.
Black.
Here.
Reneko.
Here.
Dixon Oso.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
We have quorum.
Awesome. Moving forward, the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I will second that motion. Oh, it's okay.
There you go. Here you go.
All right, minutes have been approved. Today, there are no cases withdrawn and there are no continuance requests. Katie had something, Friddle, you had something to share?
Yes, so I would normally announce this under items from Planning Department, but wanted to do it while we had at least a couple of people in the audience because it's for the public to know. We last week introduced an ordinance at council to amend fees for a number of different items that the Planning Department processes. This will go back to City Council for final hearing and adoption on June 3rd. So this would increase design review application fees across the board. Administrative approvals would go from $200 to $250, and then commission review fees. Currently, it's one fee no matter what you're doing that requires commission review. So if you're installing a sign that's over 100 square feet, you pay the same fee as someone that's building the Devon Tower. We're proposing to stagger those so that the larger the scope of the project, the higher the fee, to be more reflective of, resources that go into that review process, et cetera. So those are all available for review on PrimeGov, or you can reach out to staff if you want more information about what those fees look like, as well as the fees for Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment items. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, consent docket. Anyone may request individual consideration of a consent item. And this is SRCA-25-00005. Does anyone?
Yeah, so if there are any questions, staff's available and the applicant is present, or you all can make a motion and vote to approve the consent docket.
All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent docket.
I'll second.
We have a second. All right, it's been approved. Moving into cases for individual consideration, we have UDCA-24 00012 at 1229 Northwest 26th Street. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is for a proposed grocery store at the northeast corner of North Classen Boulevard and Northwest 26th Street. Some of you have been around long enough to know that this has been through the Urban Design Commission a few times. Back in 2016, there was a SPUD approved for this site that contemplated a 3-story event center style project with surface parking lot right on the corner of the lot facing the street. And in fact, in 2018, the commission did approve a project, a certificate of approval for that project, but it was never pursued, other than the fact that they demolished all the buildings on the site. And they put up a construction fence to surround the site, which, as it turns out, has become a little bit of an eyesore for the Asian district, I would say. And so we're looking forward to having this site developed going forward. What has transpired since then is that they came to us with a new certificate of approval last year for this grocery store project, and we began to compare it with the SPUD that was approved in 2016 and realized that there were a lot of things that the proposed grocery store project did not comply with in terms of the SPUD requirements and regulations, and therefore, after much consideration, we realized the only way to rectify that if they wanted to save and keep on with this project was to apply for and get approved a new SPUD for the site, which this commission reviewed and recommended approval of to the Planning Commission in January of this year. And now that that SPUD has been adopted and become law and effective on the site, we realized it's time to bring the certificate of approval, which was filed almost a year ago, back before the commission. So before us today, we have a nearly 29 or 28,000, 30,000 square foot building that is proposed on the south west corner of the site, right on the corner of 26th and Classen. It is pretty much 2-story in volume, but really just 1 story inside, except for a mezzanine level on the north side of the building. And it is proposed to connect to the existing Golden Phoenix building on the north side of the site. However, in approving the SPUD, the SPUD site was still left under the control of the Urban Design Overlay District and still subject to the design guidelines and development standards of the Urban Design Overlay. So in addition to comparing it to the SPUD that was approved and those standards, we also compared it to the Urban Design Overlay standards, and we came up with a variety of issues of concern that we think the commission needs to deliberate on and consider before acting on the project. The first one is that there are portions of the building, I think on all 3 sides of the building, that involve the use of metal, architectural metal panels. However, there is a standard, it's actually a regulation in the code for the Urban Design Overlay that metal siding is not permitted for exterior walls of buildings. We bring this up to you not to say that we shouldn't allow these panels, it's just a point to raise that the material that's been proposed is really architectural level metal siding as opposed to your standard metal material that this guideline was apparently developed and adopted to prohibit. So staff is comfortable with the fact that these panels can be used and may be used in the design of this project, and it's similar to metal siding treatment that was used on a building in the Asian district that was approved in 2020 up at 30th and Classen. Dispensing with that, we now get involved with a variety of concerns that perhaps have not been adequately addressed, and we'd like to have the commission provide us and the applicants feedback on where to go with some of these issues. The first one is that the project is supposed to be, per the guidelines, is supposed to be constructed compatible with existing building stock in the vicinity in terms of height, size, type of construction, setback, and general appearance. This building is proposed to be built with tilt-up concrete panels, and not all of that not all of them, the metal sidings are proposed would cover the entire surface of the tilt-up concrete. So you're going to have exposed tilt-up concrete. It might be painted, might not be, we don't know for sure, but at this point, the fact of the matter is there just aren't many buildings in the Asian District or anywhere up and down Classen Boulevard that are constructed with concrete tilt-up construction. So our concern is that it's not going to be much or very, very compatible with the general appearance of other buildings up and down Classen, especially those that are built within the Asian District between 23rd and 30th. So we've suggested in this section of the report that the commission might want to consider a continuance of this item to allow the applicant to come up with some other ideas about how to perhaps cover more of the exposed concrete tilt-up panels, or come up with a different way of constructing the building so that it's more in keeping with the other construction types in the general vicinity of this site. The second issue of greater concern probably is the fact that the code calls for in its guidelines that buildings that are on a street frontage should have street access from the streetscape along the street to the main entry to the building. In this case, their preferred alternative is one that has a blank facade. It's not exactly blank. There is no entry door on the west elevation of the building. There is storefront glass proposed on this elevation, the west elevation facing Classen, but the glass is mounted high on the wall with the bottom of the windows at 6 feet above the sidewalk. So there's not going to be any visual interaction between the streetscape and the inside of the building when you have that situation. Additionally, the guidelines call for street access doorways with glass storefronts. And again, the storefronts are not really there because they're mounted too high up on the wall, and there is no entry on this facade. Basically, we feel that the applicant has proposed a building that faces its rear, the rear of the elevation, or the rear of the project toward the street, and that's not a concept or a theme that we want to get started up and down Classen Boulevard. We're concerned that if the project were approved as proposed, that it might give other people up and down the street who happen to have a parking lot in the rear of their building the idea that, well, hey, maybe if they didn't have to put a door facing Classen, then maybe I don't have to do that either. And we're quite concerned about that becoming a possibility. The applicant has proposed an alternative floor plan that does show a two-door entry exit access on the west elevation facing Classen Boulevard. However, we have never received any elevations that show what that looks like in terms of proportion on the scale of that door opening on the greater scale or the facade of the building. So we're a little concerned about the functionality, we're a little concerned about the appearance, we're a little concerned about proportionality and how that's going to look and whether it's going to function like the code in compliance with what the guidelines suggest. So because of that, we have again recommended a continuance of the project to allow the applicant to prepare and submit an elevation that shows what their proposed west-facing entry door would look like in the context of the greater design of that west elevation, and to give them more time to, again, consider some alternatives to better screen the exposed tilt-up concrete walls. We did offer, as a backup plan, sort of, so that's our preference, is a continuance. But as a backup, we offered the opportunity for the commission, if they didn't feel that any of these issues are of any significant concern, that you could go ahead and approve the project as proposed, or with some conditions of approval that might direct these kinds of changes that we've outlined in our staff report. The other thing to note is that there are both proposed on-street angled parking stalls on the north side of 26th and revisions to the existing on-site angled parking stalls on the south side of Northwest 27th Street, which both front on the property of this particular project. And those types of parking, on-street parking issues do require approval by the Traffic and Transportation Committee. So any action that the commission might undertake to go ahead and approve this project today would also necessarily have to have a condition of approval that requires that review to take place. That concludes my presentation, and we're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
I have a question. So you mentioned that there was an issue with is it the architectural continuity of this building or the scale in relation to the other ones?
There's a 5-story building across the street, about a block or two north of here. So we're not so much concerned about the height of the building. We're more concerned about, the guideline talks about type of construction and general appearance. And if you're going to build a concrete tilt-up building and you're not going to cover those concrete panels with brick veneer or wood or something else to kind of make it more compatible with the design type or construction of other buildings in the area, it's going to stick out a little bit in terms of compatibility with the other buildings in the area.
I guess the regular citizen probably would not or a neighbor wouldn't know that that was a challenge with the construction. I think more about the integration into the rest of the district with like some of the hip and gabble rooftops and all that. And I didn't know if there was also like a pattern book for buildings in the Asian district or architectural designs for them. Because I see that in some of the other buildings, and this doesn't have that, but that's not part of the regulation.
No, there is a misconception that the guidelines for the UD for the Asian district do include Asian influence or Asian architectural style. Mm-hmm. That's not the case.
Thank you.
Northwest 23rd Street. From the onset of this design project, we really wanted to stand apart from the existing structure, but bring a modernity to the site. The layout of the building has everything to do with what we feel is addressing what the urban guidelines are trying to do in this area, creating a density along the streetscape. Of course, there are lots of different styles in the district as well as functions. This building is oriented in a way that makes sense because it is a grocery store, because the primary entrance needs to be where people are parking their cars. We do have entrances, however, on the south side of the building along 26 where we have some angled parking, which of course we'll seek the appropriate protocol or permits for during permitting. So there are ways to enter the building. We just feel that, the way that the traffic at this area works, putting an entrance on that side, it's not only confusing to pedestrians and patrons of the grocery store, but it's inconvenient for all parties. It's inconvenient for the owner for security reasons. It's not required for egress reasons, so we have enough exits out of the building for our occupancy. It is superfluous. We don't want to, and another reason for that storefront being raised. Again, it's not your typical retail store where you want a broad storefront showing that interaction, drawing people in. We actually want to funnel people into the appropriate entry and exit points and not confuse them by bringing that storefront to the ground. That also works for the functionality of the building, and that we can line this entire wall with cooling, refrigerating, produce, deli, all this equipment that's required for the grocery store. The real reason for this development and the change from the original maybe program of doing an event space is really just the growth. You know, we've got an influx of people moving to this area. There's a great need for grocery stores. The Chinatown market has exceeded its current space. So we will essentially be moving that grocery store into the new building, into the new facility, having all new equipment, nice large ceilings, and a more suitable space for their operation. The existing building houses the Golden Phoenix restaurant. That will remain, and it has expanded over time and taken up some of that building space. In the future, we may come back with some modifications to the existing building, but for now, that will become the backup storage for the building, the dry and cold storage for this grocery store, for the new grocery store. So again, when we went through this, Bud, I did meet with the city council member for this district, and he was really excited about the project. And one of the things I want to direct you about that west facade is the landscape plan. You know, we intend, and after speaking with the council member, he really suggested we make this a very nice place for pedestrians. We've got bike racks on that side of the building. We have shade trees all along there. We will fill that with landscaping. We have a larger than required sidewalk, again, to just create that sense of place. But again, it's a directional place where you're moving to the entry at Golden Phoenix or around the building to the main entries. So that's really, you know, my way of addressing that, but I'd love to dig deeper if you're interested. But yeah, I'm hoping after all that we've had to do, we can get this thing approved and develop this site and make it beautiful.
I do want to point out that there is an access on the south elevation of the building, but it's noted on the floor plan as an emergency exit only.
Any questions for the applicant?
Some conversation.
Yes.
So I like the idea of the grocery store, and I like the idea of the parking being off the street, so it's not being an auto-centric parking solution.
Agree.
Yeah, the western facade, I feel like that needs some thought.
I'm pardon.
Some thought.
Okay.
I speak softly. But,
In terms of material?
well, I'm gonna step back 1 second.
Oh.
So I do think the pedestrian experience is important, and you're correct in the fact that landscaping can be a part of that. You mentioned shade trees.
Mm-hmm.
You have really only 4 shade trees along the western edge. You've got a lace bark elm and a Chinese pistache on the far south, another lace bark elm, another Chinese pistache on the far north. The pistache is going to be a long time before it's going to be shade. The rest of them are some thinner evergreen or low, and they're not going to give you the canopy. So you've got west exposure, and you have much less shade opportunity. I think that in your scheme with a building up on basically the lot line, that this would benefit from, the pedestrian would benefit from some true tree canopy for that. I do think that even though you're saying that you don't want to necessarily have transparency and connectivity of the pedestrian, I do think that elevation really needs to feel like it's at pedestrian scale. Right now, because of the belt course that you've created for where your wood, I'm assuming that's wood low
No, it's
concrete
actually
high?
it's actually broken up vertically. So, the concrete building does have higher and lower parapets, and at the higher parapets, that's where we have it's ACM panels, architectural composite metal panels, and they're extremely beautiful,
Sure.
a high quality material. And I think that the owners are very amenable to adding perhaps, a direct applied stucco finish coat over the concrete panels, which is the material of the neighboring building. We see EIFS a lot in this area. So I think that there's certainly some material things. But again, even in the proportionality of the building, I'm stretching that kind of typical window idea into like the scale of this building as a way from where I see it being viewed the most is by the car or by the bicycle traffic, which is the primary of this thoroughfare. So to me, that is the view that I want to try to bring to scale. And then at the pedestrian level, it does become more of the landscaping, more of, but again, it's not a place, it's not a park, it's not a destination. It's more of just creating a place for someone to move through that space and make it part of that streetscape rather than our building. It's kind of it's kind of a barrier in a sense.
But you do create even though it's automobile traffic, you are creating something that from a scale standpoint is going to stand out. Is it masonry veneer below the belt course?
We had shown that at one time.
The renderings show masonry, the 2D elevations say concrete.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth. I think that, that's one of the things we wanted to talk about before we just change all the drawings. I really
Right.
wanted to get some feedback on materials.
Your delineation of your concrete panel is such that it's really, whether intended to be or not, it's really kind of big box oriented.
Right, very
It's
industrial.
It's that big, large panel.
Right.
And then you've got your belt course for whether it's masonry, whether it's a stamped concrete, whether it's just a different
Right.
color, is sitting up at that 12, 13, 14 feet line.
Mm-hmm.
So the individual that's walking by there is seeing a window that's above 6 feet and masonry to 12 and really nothing in between. So it's harsh on the pedestrian, but even on the vehicle, its scale is such. I'm not opposed to concrete, but I think the concrete would need to be detailed in a manner that was sensitive to the scale of the buildings and not, and this is me, I'm one of 5 today. I want to hear what Jorge has to say. Let me just kind of break it down into, I think that there's a solution. It needs some more sensitivity to the elevation, and then I think that your landscaping plan needs to be trying to protect the pedestrian from a canopy standpoint on that. Because a west edge next to what might be a 30-foot tall concrete building, that is going to be a very harsh environment, someone to walk across in August at 5 p.m. If they're walking down the street and going to come around the corner and enter in.
Yeah.
And I think that's both for the west and the south exposures.
I
Going
would
to the
also
east,
point out that we do have quite like at the southwest corner, from curb to the building, there's 20 feet. I mean, it's a wide area, and so the sidewalk is certainly not up against the building. We try to pull it away. I also want to separate that traffic with heavy shrubs and trees. That's how we've oriented all along that. So that's what you're creating, a little pocket for that pedestrian. And so but I can see what you mean. I guess it's just sounding a little subjective. So is it the materials, or is it really just is it the window height that to you feels too hot? I mean, too
it doesn't have
cold.
to be. It doesn't have to be the window
Yeah.
to go down to the ground. I understand the inside, the
Yeah.
cooling, the refrigerated units along the west wall. I understand that. I do feel like it is a very monolithic
Sure.
and monumental. These aren't bad words, but in this particular context, I
Maybe
feel like they're a little bit.
brutalist.
You use the word, not.
Well,
And also, so you have 20 feet from the curb to the building. You've got maybe 5 feet from the curb to the sidewalk, and another 10 feet from the sidewalk to the building. I think that's good amount of planting
Helps.
area for big trees. And I think those big trees are going to really help the path along
Right.
there. And also, they're going to be far less maintenance for the owner than smaller shrubs and such.
Right.
I just feel like if you were to bring the pedestrian scale of the materials down a bit to where the elevations are not such big box
Okay.
architecture, and we will definitely want to understand. I mean, if the perspectives that we're seeing have masonry veneer, but there's a consideration that it would go to tilt-up concrete at the lower level, that would be something that
Okay.
I don't think you want to
I
go
like-
there because
I
it's going to
understand.
become. I did the staff report referenced Reno and MacArthur, and so taking a trip along that avenue and seeing the scale of those buildings, the material of those buildings, and what it did, it entirely changed the feeling of that
Right, right.
roadway, and that's not the way that Classen feels currently, especially when you come off of 23rd and you're heading north around the curb. It still has a very intimate scale of building, and I think that although this building can be big, again, I'm not opposed to the height.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to the use of materials. It's more like the texture of the materials and how the
Maybe just
detailing is
finessing
done.
it a little at that pedestrian level.
I would say
understand.
finesse it a fair amount.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you
And I want to
for
hear
your
what Jorge
feedback.
has to say.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so my comment on it is just, just the context of some buildings that may be similar. Uptown Grocery, there's more glass is one big thing. It's scalable, you can feel it. It's also not quite as flat. That's just one grocery store in town that comes to mind that was done well. The Fred Jones building, it's similar, like probably scales this. And while that's further down Classen, it's big, but it also feels scalable. It actually feels, if I looked at this and I actually squint my eyes, it looks like a one-story building. And you shrink it down.
intentional.
It needs to feel like it maybe is multiple stories. And with that, you almost kind of, if it's glass to the floor, I think more glass would actually help this. It would glow. The texture that light creates at night naturally would be nice on this street. And so what we're looking at is it's walls. And so overhangs is one. However
I've
that
maxed
could
out
look.
my overhangs.
It just gives, even on, so just to give an idea for Uptown, because it's being another grocery store, they wrap corners and they have stuff pop out, and they have a
Mine
few
wraps the
variations.
corner.
Do what?
Mine wraps the corner the maximum I can go. So my
right.
awnings wrap all the way around the building too.
It is probably,
I like adding more windows. I think that's certainly something we could look at doing.
yeah, but it's probably about 12 foot, maybe like 11 foot to the top window of most of these. I almost, and this is dangerous for me to say how to design, because I'm not saying, but I almost, even if windows or cost was an issue, I'd like more windows, but if you had to make some more blank areas to move some glass to go to the ground, I still think that
Would help.
that would possibly help. But I think massing, scale, and those things to make this feel like, I don't know, to glow a little bit. I still think it's, this is a challenge, because it is, you need one entrance.
See, I'm trying to make it look small by making it look like a one-story building.
Right.
Even though its overall scale is big, but it also covers a large area. So, it's like, I'm playing with those proportions for sure. So
Yeah.
maybe that's confusing. And maybe, is that what you mean? Kind of breaking that into more of a two-story type situation would perhaps help you with the scale?
I'll confuse you if I say, yeah, maybe I'm getting too detailed on that. So, I don't know, can you see that?
Yes, of course, yeah.
It's,
So we're
I
about as
honestly
tall
am-
as that front bump out where the sign is. That's about our wall height, total height at the tallest point.
right, and
Just so you kind of have an idea. This is a much larger store than we have.
yeah, and I don't necessarily, it's funny, if you look at that building, and it made me think of Fred Jones as I look at that. I don't necessarily think it needs to look like that.
Yeah,
But what-
this is very much, I mean, it matches Fred Jones, certainly. It has a very industrial feel, but then with the red brick, that brings that warmth. And so I think when we're talking about materials, perhaps that's something on our part, on our building that we can incorporate. We've talked about using maybe some black brick or something that's more modern, but perhaps gives that traditional feel of a brick material at the pedestrian level. Would that maybe help? Because I mean, that brick to me is what stands out about both of those buildings that you're mentioning.
Right.
Right.
And part of that design, like it's fairly classic.
Yes,
And
indeed.
that is like, even with the detailing around the windows and that, it
The
gives.
cast stone.
But if I say that, you could come back and it's like, I don't want you to take it and design based on exactly what I said, but the idea is kind of the feel. But I know this tilt-up's one of the things on this too.
Yes.
Where it needs to be like singular walls, which is part of the design to an extent.
Right, yeah. Well, there's difference. Some are 6-inch thick, most are, and that's the lower parapets that you see that will be exposed. And then our kind of entry, kind of architectural element in the center that gets the canopy roof over it, the flat roof, and the architectural composite metal, that is a little bit taller and a little bit thicker.
Okay,
So
yep.
it does create some variation in the facade. It's not all at the same plane, as well as that composite metal will actually have some furring, so it'll turn back and create a corner at each of those locations. So, and again, it's, to me, I look at that grocery store and it has lots of different functions, right? It has a florist, it has, so they're trying to, they designed it to have that feel. And I think we're kind of doing the opposite. We're trying to get people to know that this isn't where you come into the building, that it's a big box store. To me, that there's a benefit to that type of design that lets the user know exactly what the function of the building is. They can look at it and know, okay, that's not a retail store that I'm going to walk in and, get my hair done or something. So to me, but I can see what you mean. I appreciate the feedback. We need to soften, we need to make it blend, it sounds like, more with what we see in the neighborhood.
Right. And last comment, and I used to run Classen often, and you run close to buildings and some that feel like walls, it just doesn't. I think safety is maybe the word, or it's like I kind of don't want to stand here.
Yeah.
With this, it's like I do think glass to the ground is one comment I'd make of in areas to do it. I think it will create a more scalable thing, and it will also strategically, maybe as you pass it, it gives you a different vibe, because this is a really long wall, and
It is.
the more different it can feel as you cross it, a single wall the entire way is just like it's stale, and so glass is one of the best thoughts on this that I think could approach it. Anyone can disagree, by the way, or make that less confusing what I just said.
I have issues with the tilt-up. I do think that if there was some spectacular way that you were kind of using it, I would probably look past it. So it's not necessarily the precast, there's a lack of intricacy. So finesse, I don't know how you quantify that, but I think when I go through the Asian district, there's a lot of intricacy, and I associate Asian architecture with a lot of intricacy. So that to me is what I think is missing. And I don't necessarily think it has to be glass. I think there's, I wish I could tell you what it is, I don't know, but it's like there's something that could be there that could make this very unique and somewhat iconic for the area. It's just not there yet.
Okay.
What about the awning? Like I noticed on Uptown Space, they have those awnings on the pedestrian level that sort of make the delineation between the second story and the first without the window. I mean, I don't know if you can put that up without a window, but that with some lighting, sort of for pedestrians to feel more comfortable. I'm not sure what that may be, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
You would-
Well, and on the east side of the building, there are some storefronts for some individual suites. And so, it's just not at this side because this isn't where pedestrians are entering the building. So it's, again, but I completely understand you. I think this feedback has been great. instead of us trying to force an approval today with a bunch of conditions, I say we just do a continuance to the, what would it be, Katie? How quickly can we come back?
The June meeting is the 25th, but you would need, everything turned in by June 3rd, which is Tuesday, right? Or we would do
Yeah, we would need
July
revised plans by
23rd.
next, yeah,
By June 3rd, is that right?
by Tuesday,
Which is
next
June
week.
3rd? Is that right?
next week.
Yep,
I understand, but I'm just making sure that it is the 3rd.
yep,
I'm not looking at a calendar. Okay.
yeah. And then the other option is July 23rd.
And what's the deadline for the July, or is that the deadline, July 23rd?
That'd be the 24th of June.
Oh, okay. Oh, 24th of June.
Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference on which one of those?
Do you
Yes, please do.
I'd like to ask a question of the commission. It seems most of the comments are focused on the glass, fenestration, concrete tilt-up, not much discussion about the entry on the west side. Is there any concern that the commission has about having or not having an entry on that west elevation?
And if I may, because my summation was that if we address it at a pedestrian level, that perhaps the entry point isn't what's important. It's just not being that solid wall across there. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong.
For me, as one, scale, rhythm, delicacy of the material usage, and really a pedestrian-focused, shaded landscaping, I could step away from the requirement for a west entrance. But your wall becomes really very much a feature that is pleasing to the automobile and pleasing to the pedestrian and reflective of the district that it exists in. If you can accomplish that, then I can
Just
step
all
away.
that? No problem. By Tuesday, sure.
I think your burden is higher because of where you have the parking. I don't think it's unattainable, though.
It's actually quite good. I feel like that we're starting to put the parking behind these buildings, and it does create a nicer streetscape and thoroughfare. So, it's like those guidelines perhaps don't address that particular configuration, but, it's just a unique situation, I think. And so hopefully I can hit it out of the park.
I
for
do
you
have
guys.
a parking question for you.
Yes, sir.
What is the requirement for parking for this area?
0.
Is it got a 0 parking requirement?
Neighborhood
Okay.
business.
I was getting ready to say
but
that
all of our parking, of course, is that we provide as to code, and we're very close also for retail requirements for grocery stores.
It seemed light on the site, and I was wondering if really that was going to be a high pedestrian coming to the building, or if it's pretty much all vehicular.
Pretty much all vehicular, but I mean, I think that's why we're really trying to maximize parking, because we don't want to have a bunch of off-street parking for these neighbors and neighborhood to the east. So parking's important, we know that, and we're trying to get the most out of our site.
Do you have a preference on continuous date?
Yeah, sooner the better. Let's go for June 3rd. I will get her done.
Do we have to give a date? Is a continuance a continuance?
Yeah, because they got to put it on, well,
They need to know when they're coming back.
Yep, so it would be to the June 25th meeting.
yes.
And it can always be
For all your
continued once
feedback,
more.
commissioners.
Yeah, it could be continued again.
I have one final comment.
Of
This
course,
is very
please.
minor. So I did see the bike racks was an attempt to make it more pedestrian friendly on the street. I do think bike racks actually next to the entrance could be also much better as well.
Okay.
A minor, I think it would be a big thing. I think they'd be used. They'd be less likely to be used on that corner because, you'd be parking to walk. So,
Sure, sure.
but-
Well, and I also think about the Golden Phoenix, because Golden Phoenix's entry point is west, but there's almost no parking there. So most people do currently park in the rear and walk to that door. So it's kind of a already existing traffic pattern. But yeah, I think you're right, and I'll think about that in the next landscape plan for sure.
Okay.
I have one question, comment. The images of the Uptown Grocery, they had cart storage out front. And I'm wondering how you're going to handle that as well.
No, we showed on the floor
Okay,
plan.
okay.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Okay.
We're very excited to get this project done, so we appreciate your feedback, commissioners.
Before we make a motion, do you have any other questions? Because this is the discussion, by the way.
No, I think
Okay.
you've given me a lot. I was speaking with Jennifer Lee. She's the family. She represents the family that owned the building, and she and I have been working on this design for a couple of years now. But yeah, she as well. She has some great ideas already about how to incorporate it in more with the Asian district design, and yeah, so we're excited to get to it.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll move to continue this item to the June 23rd meeting,
25th,
25th meeting.
yes.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Sarah. All right, the motion to continue has been approved. Okay, moving forward, we have no other business. Communications, we have the administrative approval report. Do we make a motion on that?
Nope.
Okay, no motion on that. Comments from the planning staff?
Just what we already discussed at the beginning of the meeting. I don't have any other news to report on anything.
Okay. Any comments from commission members? All right, next meeting date is the 25th of next month. We're adjourned.